Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community, understanding, expertise, results, Bloomington and Indianapolis, lawmg.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations, rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. Indiana is planning to execute a death row prisoner for the first time in 15 years next week in Michigan City. But unlike federal executions, no journalists will be allowed to witness the execution.
Nationally, we have had botched executions, and there should be an objective person there to report to the public on what has happened during an execution.
President-elect Donald Trump has plans to deport millions of people. This could have massive consequences for the economy, and even those who came here legally are worried about what might happen to them.
And Woodburn Hall 100 is again hosting classes. But now the controversial murals by Thomas Hart Benton are covered up. These stories and more right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, in less than a week, the state of Indiana will execute Joseph Corcoran. He'll be the first prisoner to die at the hands of the state since 2009. But unlike federal executions, Indiana will not allow media to witness and document theirs. As Ethan Sandwise reports, state lawmakers and press organizations are voicing their objections.
A jury convicted Corcoran of killing 4 people in the late 90s. Indiana Criminal Code permits only certain people to attend his execution, including the warden, physicians, a chaplain and spiritual advisor, the victims' families, people assisting in the execution, and up to 5 people invited by the convicted person, but no press.
How else does the public even know? It's a semi-secret, private ritual. And not to have the media there, I think, is a huge failing.
The Department of Corrections told media to assemble in a limited space area near the prison without restroom access. It added in an email that no media briefings or interviews will be conducted. Instead, a single update is scheduled by email after the execution is completed.
I covered the Timothy McVeigh execution years ago, obviously, at the federal penitentiary, and that was all set up. They just really don't seem to want to provide any information to the public.
Indiana is one of only 2 states to bar press from executions. The other is Wyoming, which hasn't had an execution in over 30 years. It's been 15 years since Indiana put its last prisoner to death, Matthew Wrinkles.
The state wasn't able to obtain drugs to carry out lethal injection for that period of time.
Green represented Wrinkles in 2009, and she's now working on Corcoran's appeals. There's a lot that can go wrong during an execution, and Green says that's why it's important to have independent media witnesses.
Nationally, we have had botched executions, and there should be an objective person there to report to the public on what has happened during an execution.
Indiana used a 3-drug cocktail to kill Wrinkles, but the difficulty of obtaining those legally made it opt for a single drug this time.
This is the first time we're using pentobarbital, so we're kind of unclear what to expect in terms of what, the person being put to death will go through.
The anti-seizure medication pentobarbital, used for federal executions in Terre Haute, is slower acting and has been linked to a condition that causes the lungs to fill with blood. Media witnesses in Terre Haute reported that Alfred Bourgeois took almost half an hour to die in 2020. Citing a 2017 secrecy law, Governor Holcomb declined to share where the state purchased the drug.
If they're not allowed to be in the room to let the public know what is happening, you have to ask, should we be doing it at all?
Yoder isn't the first state lawmaker to object. Republican State Representative Bob Morris asked Governor Holcomb to stay Corcoran's execution and filed a bill to abolish the death penalty. Democratic Representative Matt Pierce opposes capital punishment, but says it should be done transparently, if at all.
If the state is going to execute people in the name of the people, then the people should be able to see what the state is doing.
Indiana's execution witness law is explicit on who can attend. Unless the legislature amends that law, it's not clear there's much reporters or even the governor can do. But Kelly says the state should be transparent when it can.
To be honest, this entire situation, since it came up in the summer that we were going to resume executions, has been just a closed process. The Department of Correction has refused to release basic information.
Corcoran's execution is scheduled before sunrise next Wednesday. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Ethan Sandweiss.
And we're joined now by our George Hale, who covers the death penalty, has witnessed several federal executions. Thanks for coming on the show, George. So where's the case stand now? We've seen a number of filings about his mental health.
Yeah, so Joseph Corcoran suffers from paranoid schizophrenia, and so his attorneys are arguing that he's incompetent to be executed. So far, the Indiana Supreme Court has rejected those claims, and so now the case is in the federal courts, and so we're sort of waiting to see what they decide.
Yeah, so there's also a new lawsuit in federal court about his access to a spiritual advisor. Can you kind of explain both sides of that argument?
Yeah, so, from the prisoner's perspective, the spiritual advisor is very important because it's sort of the one person who's in the room with your interests in mind. Everyone else is, trying to execute you. And so, having prayer or, just access to, a friendly face is, kind of important. The state argues, that having a stranger in the room threatens the whole process because they could disrupt it, they could, reveal the identities of executioners and things like that. So, the court will have to sort of take both sides into consideration.
And I understand similar lawsuits have served to delay executions. Is that what they're trying to do here, and do you think it will be delayed?
So I do think it's an important challenge because of that reason, because it has worked in the past in other states. What's interesting, though, is that yesterday the Indiana Corrections Department withdrew their position on whether or not the spiritual advisor could be in the room, seeming to recognize that possibility. So I wouldn't be surprised if this suit actually gets tossed out soon.
Okay, and are you headed up too for?
Yeah, we'll be there on Tuesday.
All right. Well, looking forward to your reporting, and thank you so much.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Well, President-elect Donald Trump has announced plans to deport millions of undocumented immigrants once he takes office. Isabella Vesperini joins us from the newsroom. Tell us more.
Thanks, Joe. Trump's plans could have massive consequences for the economy. It's also worrying for those who have good legal status here. I spoke with two Bloomington women about their concerns for the future.
The two women wish to remain anonymous due to concerns about what may happen to them. They chose to go by Mary and Ruth. They came to the U.S. with their children from Venezuela to seek stability and escape persecution. The education system in Venezuela is unstable. There are teacher shortages, high dropout rates, and school conditions are poor. Last weekend, President-elect Trump spoke in an interview about his plans to deport people with criminal records and those who have entered the country illegally. He also said he would end birthright citizenship, but would be willing to work with Democrats to protect dreamers, immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. But Trump's plans could potentially negatively hurt people who still have good legal status.
All these groups of people are scared to death. Refugees are afraid that they're going to be deported because they're not citizens, even though they have a very good immigration status and are on a path toward citizenship. People with asylum.
A portion of the people Lenzen assists come to the U.S. to seek asylum. They have left their country for fear of persecution or harm. Once in the country, they have 1 year to apply for asylum. An immigration judge needs to review their application so they can be legally recognized as refugees and seek protection from the threats in their home country. Once the application is approved, they have a clear path to citizenship. But it can take years for an asylum application to be reviewed. The number of pending cases in immigration courts has increased 44% since last year, and 3.6 million cases are currently waiting to be reviewed.
If the people that are here temporarily, they're working and they're applying for asylum, but it hasn't been approved yet, then they're at risk. They do have a sheet of paper that says for 1 year you are authorized to be here and work, but you have to file for asylum. If you don't get that done within 1 year, then you are vulnerable.
That period of being in limbo, waiting for their applications to be approved, is stressful for Mary and Ruth, even if they're both here legally. They're afraid of being separated from their kids. Ruth fears she'll be deported to Mexico and not be able to come back. Mary is currently working with a lawyer to prepare for her asylum hearing next year, but is still scared. For those whose status is not that good, Lenzen tries as much as possible to reassure them.
I advise them to be quiet and make sure their car, all the lights are working so the police can't stop for a bad brake light. Follow the speed limits. Make sure your license is current. Don't get in any arguments with people.
Lenzen's organization assists about 20 families at a time. He provides financial resources, rental assistance, transportation to and from health appointments, and more. He also helps people learn about their legal rights. 2 families from the Refugee Support Network were deported during Trump's last presidency.
We're helping them arrange to have legal advice so that if the father is grabbed and deported, but the children are U.S. citizens, well, where do the children go? You know, do they have a guardian, a court-ordered guardian, a family member that can take care of them?
Deporting millions of people could severely harm the economy and raise prices.
I think the idea that we can somehow deport everyone who is undocumented or whose case gets turned down and still have the economy function is false.
Data from 2022 shows that nearly 48 million immigrants live in the country and generated about $1.6 trillion in economic activity. Immigrants most often work in educational and health services, professional and business services, and construction. Many immigrants also occupy jobs in the food industry, picking fruit, meat packing, jobs many Americans don't want.
People say that undocumented workers drive wage rates down because they'll work for a lower wage. But the truth is, Americans are not competing for those jobs. It's not like if you get rid of all of the people coming in from Mexico and El Salvador or Guatemala, all of a sudden Americans will stream into the meatpacking plants or start picking strawberries.
In 2023, about 433,000 immigrants came to Indiana, about 6.3% of the population. About 24% of those immigrants are undocumented. The immigrant population in the state has increased 4.8% since 2013.
We are seeing a huge uptick in people that don't have legal status here. It's causing a lot of problems. It's overrunning our school systems. It's overrunning our healthcare systems. And so we have got to get a handle on the illegal immigration problem. It really is a federal issue, but if the feds won't do it, then the states have an obligation to do that.
Many immigrants come into the country legally, but then don't leave. In 2022, about 853,000 visa overstays were reported. President-elect Trump vows to deport these people and more. Reporting from the newsroom for Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Isabella Vesperini.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. If you're looking for tickets for IU's football playoff opener next Friday at Notre Dame, expect to pay a hefty price on the resale market. And classes have resumed in IU's Woodburn Hall 100, but you won't be able to see the murals that led to its disuse. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
One snowman cake, present and correct.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
We have much to be grateful for.
Just what I wanted for Christmas.
I had hoped for the opportunity to dazzle.
Dazzle?
Good news indeed.
Welcome back to Indiana News Desk. We're joined now by Shelby Brown for more headlines from around the state. Hi, Shelby.
Hi, Joe. Thanks. Plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit are asking a federal court to compel Bradford Bamba Sr., the longtime team director for Indiana University men's basketball, to answer questions related to sexual assault allegations against him. And a warning, the story contains language that might be uncomfortable for some audiences. Bamba is accused of serial sexual assault under the guise of medical care. Bamba asserted his Fifth Amendment right 45 times during a December 4th deposition. The lawyers for two former IU men's basketball players who are plaintiffs in the case contend Bamba asserted his Fifth Amendment rights too broadly. Among the questions Bamba declined to answer was whether he routinely performed digital rectal exams during athletes' physicals. The Bloomington City Council will be getting a raise next year, just not nearly as big as originally proposed. Council members' salaries will go from $24,000 to $25,000 a year. The original proposed would have doubled their salaries to $48,000. Mayor Carrie Thompson was critical of the initial proposal, but supported the $1,000 raise, which passed 7-1.
I was not comfortable voting on an amendment that just implements what the mayor says she wants. Like, that's not, a sound rationale for decision making. I think it's probably what we are going to vote on. That's disappointing to me.
Thompson still needs to sign the ordinance to make it official. She would receive a salary bump to just over $142,000 a year. The city clerk would make $90,000 a year. Monroe County Council member Cheryl Munson died Tuesday. The 80-year-old Munson was elected to a fourth term as a council member at large in November. Monroe County Democratic Party Chair David Henry said Munson was a quote, pillar of our community, and we mourn her loss with heavy hearts. The Monroe County Democratic Party will call a vacancy caucus to fill her position on the council. Her new term was to begin on January 1st. The Indiana University president, Pamela Whitten, touted her IU 2030 strategic plan in her annual State of University address Tuesday. The plan determines IU's direction and priorities. When Whitten highlighted its three pillars: student success, research, and service to the state. But the University Alliance for Racial Justice says Whitten's speech doesn't paint a full picture and was out of touch.
To totally ignore or gloss over all of the issues that currently face us. It's mind-boggling.
Pointed out, Whitten has faced numerous no-confidence votes and has been urged to resign by multiple academic units. It also discussed issues with free speech on campus, which has drawn criticism locally and nationally. The Indiana State Board of Education has approved a new high school diploma after months of revisions. The final proposal was very similar to the second draft debuted in August, which resembled the current Core 40 diploma more closely than the widely criticized first draft. The new diploma will allow slightly more flexibility in math, English, and electives.
This was really hard, messy, sometimes unpopular work, but where it landed is a really good place for kids.
One of the most significant changes from the current diploma is the introduction of readiness seals for enrollment, employment, and enlistment. Each category includes an honors and the Honors Plus seal. The new diploma will take effect for all students starting with the class of 2029. In Bloomington, Transit's new Route 13 will officially connect the city to parts of their far west side, including Park 48 and Ivy Tech Community College. The route which begins January 2nd, has been in the planning stage for several years.
Why it's taken this long, is anybody's guess. It just took some gumption from a few people to lead it, and that's what it took. Some elected officials that took this by the horn.
MG hopes to see more frequent stops added to the route in the future. And Joe, he also wants to see the creation of an express line from 3rd Street through Park 48 with fewer stops.
Lots of good news for people who need that. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Shelby.
of course.
Well, Indiana University quietly resumed classes this semester in a large lecture space at Woodburn Hall, where a mural depicts journalistic efforts to stop the once powerful Indiana Ku Klux Klan. Sophie Kelbley has more.
Thomas Hart Benton painted the Indiana murals in 1933 to depict state history. One panel stirred controversy when it was first displayed because it showed hooded Klan members burning a cross. The controversy continued in 2017 in Woodburn Hall 100. An online petition called on IU to remove the painting, saying it promoted hate following the racist Charlottesville, Virginia riots. The university refused. It said the mural was intended to provoke thought and unquestionably an anti-Klan work, citing the journalists in the foreground.
The press and other entities have gone up against the Klan and, made some good progress in diminishing the efforts of the Klan, and his intention was to show that in the mural.
IU agreed to make Woodburn 100 a gallery and a public lecture space. IU's former provost Lauren Robel said in a press release the art should not involve the captive audience of classes devoted to other subjects. But for the first time since 2017, classes returned to Woodburn 100. University spokesperson Mark Bodie said in a statement that retractable screens can cover the murals if instructors desire. IU has a practical concern to restart classes in the lecture hall. Bodie says using Woodburn Hall 100 for classroom space is a return to its historic use and addresses a need for larger instructional spaces. While Chatton liked Woodburn 100's previous usage, she also says that if the room is needed for lectures, covering the murals is all right. She says moving the murals would permanently damage them. One instructor who teaches in the hall says he didn't know it was reopening until he was scheduled to teach there.
I never saw any announcement or anything like from administration or anybody, that this classroom is being reopened or anything.
Layton has concerns about covering the murals, saying art should be seen, but he's glad to avoid discussion on it, which he says could consume a lecture. He says it's hard to provide students with context for the mural.
You have to do some interpretation of the mural to be able to kind of understand what Benton's goals were with depicting what he depicted.
Layton says his students likely don't know about the covered murals since they could easily miss descriptions of the murals that IU posted outside of the classroom. He says it's like pretending the murals aren't there. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sophie Kelbley.
If you're looking for a ticket for next Friday's playoff game between Indiana and Notre Dame, expect to pay a lot more than face value. As Elise Perry reports, ticket prices on the resale market have soared to see the in-state rivals play.
The message flashed on Trevor Beekler's phone just after 7 p.m. on Tuesday as he was airing his radio show. He got the playoff ticket. Relief hit first. Not just relief that he got a ticket, but that he'd scored it at a price he could live with. As an IU senior, Beekler watched IU win 9 games in 3 years before head coach Curt Cignetti came into the picture.
I'm just very excited that I get to cap off my senior year with this because I've seen so many great wins this season, and to get to see them in the first ever 12-team playoff is amazing. So I cannot wait to be up there in South Bend.
Beekler knew he wanted to go to the game, so he decided early that he would go as far as Tennessee to see it. Having it in Indiana is a huge plus for him.
Once they drew South Bend, I was like, all right, I have to see if I can get up to Notre Dame Stadium to see if I can watch our Hoosiers up there.
IU was only provided with 3,500 tickets, primarily for the families of players and coaching staff. The leftover tickets, distributed in a student raffle, sold for around $100. Students won't know the exact price until later. Beekler says he will attend the game and won't sell his ticket for a big profit. IU last played Notre Dame in 1991. Now, the two teams are facing each other for the inaugural 12-team playoff in historic Notre Dame Stadium during a magical season for the Hoosiers. Ticket prices on the secondary market soared to over $1,000 within minutes of the pairing being announced.
That's much more than I would spend for any other event, honestly, but seeing that this is such a historical event, I would have definitely wanted to try to witness it.
Tickets for the 3 other first-round games are selling for less than half of what IU Notre Dame commands. And that's for games at traditional college football powers Ohio State, Penn State, and Texas. The IU game being within driving distance of Bloomington only adds to demand for tickets.
The ticket prices reflect a perfect storm for high ticket prices for a playoff game.
But secondary market ticket prices have been falling by about $50 per day since Monday.
The important thing to keep in mind is that inventory is a big player here. So the longer a lot of ticket inventory stays on the market at this particular price, the greater sense of urgency the sellers are going to have to drop those prices.
Even if tickets fell to $500, many students still couldn't afford it.
It's a bummer that there isn't much room for students at IU to go. Every fan of each fan base should be able to see this game and not have to shell out all their savings to go see it.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Elise Perry.
The honors continue to roll in for Kurt Cignetti. The first-year IU head coach was named the Home Depot National Coach of the Year last night. Cignetti joins Bo McMillan, John Punt, Tom Allen as Indiana coaches to win a National Coaching Award. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online to cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.